We've been talking over the last few days about some of the problems in global economics, and really in this short talk I just want to turn that around a little bit and start talking about some of the potential solutions. But before I do that, I'd like to start with a story. Just before coffee break, Barry was talking about the urgent need to educate our children in a new way for a global economy, and I absolutely agree with him. And our next conference that we're doing at the Laszlo Institute is on that very subject, the new paradigm in education. And I had the great opportunity just a couple of weeks ago to visit an alternative school in the north of England, about 6 hours' drive from where I live, and I drove there. And I sat down with 7- and 8-year-olds at this alternative school, and I was completely blown away by what they could teach me. They started their day with yoga and meditation, and then the children chaired a meeting where the teachers sat down and listened to what the children had to say. And I had an opportunity to actually sit down with the children and talk to them myself. And I asked them this question. Remember, these are 7- or 8-year-olds. I said, what do you think the grown-ups or the adults should do to make this world a better place? And all of the children were immediately up with their hands. And this is what they said in their very simple, childish language: stop killing animals, help the poor people, look after the trees and the water, be kind to each other. And I felt very humbled, because I thought, how many committees and how many experts put together the 17 Sustainable Development Goals? They say that if you want the truth, ask a child. And I was quite moved, and I think we can learn from the new generation and what they're doing. But I wanted to share this quote with you because I think it's very, very important and very pertinent and relevant to everything we're discussing. This is Albert Einstein. We cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we used when we created them. But I think we're all guilty of doing that. A lot of the problems that we've created on this planet, we're now trying to solve, but we're using the same mindset that we had when we created the problems. And maybe we need to start thinking in a different way. Because I want to give you a very brief example why this doesn't work. A lot of people think our problems can be solved by science. And to be fair, a lot of problems are solved by science. You might remember one of the worst oil slick spills in history, the Deepwater Horizon. They just made a film of it. And this was an article that came out a few days after the disaster, where the scientists got together in a panic over this huge global oil spill. And they came up with an idea that they found an algae of microbes, and they thought if they poured these algae and microbes, and it says here 830,000 gallons of chemical dispersants on the oil slick, they found a way that these microbes would eat the oil. Great scientific achievement. And they did. They poured the microbes on the oil, and the microbes ate the oil, and they celebrated. Except the microbes were still hungry. And what they didn't report so much in the news is when they finished eating the oil, they started eating everything else they could possibly find, including all the fish and all the corals, creating a complete barren seabed. So sometimes using the knowledge, like Einstein says, to solve problems is not always the solution. This conference is about human-centred economics. But what does human-centred really mean? I'd like to introduce you to Mr. and Mrs. Homo Economicus, because in classical economics, this is the archetypal Mr. and Mrs. Average. And economists love Mr. and Mrs. Homo Economicus because they behave exactly as consumers should. They're consumers who live in a very competitive consumer society, and they're very happy with that. They pay their taxes, they pay into a pension, they're both employed, they spend their income on goods and services, they make rational choices between options. And they're law-abiding, they trust what their government tells them. They've got 2.4 children, and they've got 2 cars, go on holiday once, twice a year, probably die when they're around 80. And when I look at this slide, I think of my parents in the 50s and 60s, and I guess they were prime examples of Mr. and Mrs. Homo Economicus, and we meet these people all the time. Now I want to introduce you to another species that I'm increasingly meeting every day of my life. More and more. I'm meeting less Homo Economicus, and I'm meeting more and more people that I would call Mr. and Mrs. Homo Spiritus. They believe that they're spiritual beings temporarily borrowing a human body. They make their own choices on how they want to live. And they have values like compassion, empathy, forgiveness, gratitude and love. They make decisions based on values and beliefs. Now this is bad news to an economist, because Homo Economicus does as they want statistically, but Homo Spiritus, they break all the rules and they don't conform. They believe in equality, altruism, cooperation, not competition, and respect for others. And they support sustainability and caring for the natural environment and all other species. And I think you'll recognise people that you meet, and I think probably a lot of people here today fall into this category, because there has been some talk over the last few days about the spirituality and consciousness element of finding a solution to our economic problems. Here's a great quote again from the Dalai Lama when asked what surprised him most about humanity, and saying, man surprises him most. He sacrifices his health in order to make money, then he sacrifices his money to make his health better. Then he's so anxious about the future, he doesn't enjoy the present. The result being he does not live in the present or the future. He lives as if he's never going to die, then he dies having never really lived. Yeah, not that inspirational, but probably realistic. Science has proven that our entire planetary level ecosystem is intimately connected. Economic resources are not isolated, they're not exploitables, they're part of a connected, holistic whole. And the very latest research in quantum physics, the experts have come to the Laszlo Institute and presented, is changing the whole way we understand how particles communicate across space and time. It's rewriting all the rules, but again, it's emphasising connectedness. The average human body, latest figures, estimates, are that we have approximately 38 trillion cells in the average human body, which are in constant communication. And we found that our cells also communicate with other human beings. The environmental system we've talked about is holistic, living, breathing, interconnected, not composed of isolated components. And this is the last slide. So, the scientific proof of the convergence of quantum physics, biocellular communication research, natural ecosystems and planetary energy systems confirm scientifically that man is not a separate entity from the whole, but an intrinsic and connected part of the whole complex system. Irving Laszlo, who I will have the privilege to work with, said, we've not just divorced ourselves from nature, we've divorced ourselves from our inherent spirituality. So the bottom line is this. Only totally integrated and holistic solutions will solve the world's problems. We need to find a new way of thinking. We need to adopt a new form of consciousness and awareness of who we really are as a connected species. Because we really are one, and one with the universe. Thank you.